This is Gardening in America, and I'm Ed Hume. Today we're in Seattle, Washington, in the Ballard District, and I'm with Carrie McGuire, owner of Garden Goyles. Whereabouts is Ballard located?
It's north of Queen Anne, south of Crown Hill, and east of the rest of Seattle, I guess.
Just a few miles from downtown Seattle, isn't it?
Yes, very close.
These are very interesting. My gosh, you've been so creative in
Well, thanks.
and all the different ones
fun.
that you've. Oh, I guess.
Yeah.
And you know, where do you start? The snake looks kind of threatening.
Oh,
over
Diamond Lil, she's really quite tame.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And behind us here, what do you call that one?
This is the Three Graces, and it's just a spoof on the more classical themes.
And it's a water feature.
It's
isn't
a water feature. This one's plumbed for spewing, but it can also just be a pedestal or a table base for like a glass top.
Yeah. Do you have a name for this one too?
That's Bella Labatt.
Oh, Bella Labatt.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Really
They all have
cute.
little names.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I also love the pig over there.
Oh, that's my Latin pig.
Oh, gosh. And it's her name or?
Well, it's just, I call it Latin pig.
Okay.
And at the base it reads Igly Pay Igly Way, which is pig Latin for Piggly Wiggly.
Oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense. And this one?
Croc Rock.
Croc
That
Rock.
was my first design.
Oh, gosh, they're most interesting.
Oh, thanks.
Now, you make all of these.
I do.
Tell our viewers a little bit, and they can get them at the garden centers, but I know they want to know, how do you make them?
Well, I start with clay. I create my own designs in my head, and it's all three-dimensional from there. I'm working with clay. I'll start with an armature and build on that, the clay, smooth it out, and from there I make my own molds out of rubber and plastic with fiberglass shells.
And then pour them into the molds,
and pour them into the molds. Yeah.
You also do some very artistic individual pieces of metal.
I do welding from scrap metal, junk laying around that I find,
Carrie, where would your garden art be available?
They're available at garden stores and nurseries, and people would be welcome to come here to the studio and by appointment and see what I have also.
Okay, and you do commission work as well, don't you?
Sure.
Okay.
If someone has a taste for something, I'll come up with something.
We have to end with this one really interesting feature, and that is this here. This is actually a pot holder, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What a neat, and you have several others too.
Yeah, several designs of the pot feet.
There's so many different ways that you can add interest to the garden, Carrie, and you've certainly added another dimension to it.
Thank you.
Now that it's summertime and we're spending more time in the garden, you probably have a shaded area of the garden where you need to add a little bit of color. And container plantings are ideal ways to do it, because you can not only leave them in one spot, but you can move them around if you want to. And so here are a few plants that might work out just great for you. This is a tuberous begonia. In fact, it's a variety called nonstop begonia, and it flowers really all summer long, as the name implies. And remember always, the point of the leaf indicates the way in which the flower is going to face. So we always put the point of the leaf forward. Now, that's a beautiful begonia, but how about a fuchsia too? And I'm going to make this a one-sided planting so it all faces the one way. You can make it round if you want to and put these plants in the center. And you're probably tired of hearing me say that, but it's very important that you massage the roots so that they have a chance to break out of that root ball and into the new soil. So we'll put this right in there. And let's pull it around so you can see the flower a little bit better. And then down here in the front, so we've got begonias and we've got fuchsias. How about one of the New Guinea impatiens? They are very, very attractive and provide color all summer long. And remember, then in the fall, you can also take this plant out, put it in a pot, and bring it in the house and use it as a house plant during the winter season. And of course, the begonia tubers you save, and the fuchsias you can winter over, much like you would geraniums or other plants. So we'll just set that right in there. And then let's come around here on the other side and put in this wax begonia. What a nice plant this is, because it not only grows so nicely in the shade, but it also does exceptionally well in partial sun and shade or even in full sun. So we'll just put this little wax begonia, or sometimes called fibrous begonia, here in the foreground. And then let's add another special plant to the container. And that, of course, is the beautiful coleus. Coleus is known for its foliage color, and they come in such a wide range of foliage colors. You could select almost any color you want or color combination for this container. I'm going to just put this right here in the center. And look here, we've only added what? There's only 5 plants in there, and look what a nice container that makes. Now I'm also going to add back here in the back, just for a little ferny foliage texture to go along with all these broad leaves, a little bit of an asparagus fern. And here again, this is a house plant, but we often use it in the garden during the summer season. And I'll just kind of tuck that in here on the side. See, doesn't that add a nice texture? And it's going to grow up a little bit taller and blend in with the surrounding plants. So you can see with a little bit of color, you can add a lot of color to that shaded part of your garden. It's fun to create plantings in the landscape that encourage wildlife into the garden, and 2 of the interesting creatures are the hummingbirds and the butterflies. And some of the plants that attract them, you can include different ones at different times of the year, but right now these are some of the best ones. For example, in the case of the butterfly, one of the best ones are any of the white daisies. They really are attracted to them. Also the lantana, the yellow flowering varieties, or any of the lighter colors attract the butterflies right away. Butterflies, are attracted to purples and whites primarily in the garden. And you always want to stagger your plants so that they flower at different times of the year, so you get different species, because there's somewhere between 15 and 20,000 different species of butterflies. And the open areas are areas that really attract the butterflies too. Now, marigolds are another plant that the butterflies really like. And the blue here of the scabiosa, in fact, look how these 2 plants go so nice together. The blues and the yellows and the golds of the marigolds and the scabiosa are great combination plants. The butterflies also are very much attracted to snapdragons. So they're an excellent plant to have in the garden as well. And the red verbenas, or the lighter colors, are really nice for attracting butterflies too. Now let's talk a little bit about the hummingbirds. Remember, they are not attracted by scents. They are attracted by nectar, and they're just the opposite of the butterflies. They like the bright colors. Hummingbirds particularly like any of the varieties of fuchsias, again for the nectar. They're also attracted by the sweet williams and the small flowering dianthus. That really draws the hummingbirds once again because of the nectar. And another plant, it's an overlap from the butterflies, but the lantana is a very popular plant for hummingbirds. And another overlapping plant, once again, is the snapdragon. These are excellent plants for both hummingbirds and butterflies. Now, they also love the cosmos, and the cosmos, of course, come in some really bright, interesting colors. And the hummingbirds really like them very, very much. And then the plant right here next to me, of course, the lily flowering, and there are different varieties that flower at different times of the year. So you see, you can add plants to the garden, even like the very common geraniums, that will interest hummingbirds, and of course will also interest butterflies. And these are just a few of the summer flowering plants that lure the hummingbirds and butterflies into the garden. And what else? They provide beautiful summer color in the garden, and many of them are excellent cut flowers too. So they're multi-purpose plants that really provide a lot of color in the garden and lure those interesting creatures into your garden too. This has been a problem area in our garden because of the tall tree, and this area first of all was all salal. We cleared out the salal, and as you can see now it's totally bare. But now let's put the plants in place. And what I've done is selected plants that will grow under a tree. This is a high-limbed tree though, so lots of sunlight comes in. It's not totally shade. Now, keep in mind a couple things. When you select your plants, look for foliage color and foliage texture, and of course for flower color as well. The most important thing though is to select the plants you like. Now in this particular case, after setting the plants out the way I like them, had my wife come down and take a look at them, and she says, well, Ed, she says, I think I'd rather have the white Shasta daisy, Esther Reed, in front and the Cosmo in the back. So that's all right. The problem is now we've got two whites out front, so maybe we can change these this way. And you know, when they're in the pots like that, you can change them around as many times as you want to and come up with the exact, you know, scheme that you want. And by the way, you could do that in the nursery when you're buying them. Just set them in the aisles and set them out until you get the exact combination that you want. And you may find some plants that you even like better. But always remember, there are 5 things to look for: foliage texture, foliage color, because some plants have beautiful foliage color, flower color, the shapes of the plants, and then 5th, those that have fragrance. And we have all of that right in this planting. So it really makes a difference. Now you'll notice at the back, I placed the taller growing shrubs. For example, these are hydrangeas. And then I've used the annuals and the perennials. And in this particular case, I've tried to mix up the different colors, because it not only gives us a good coloration, but it also gives us the various foliage colors and foliage textures, which I mentioned before. And you know, when we do something like that, so you saw the before, now you see the after, and then you'll see it also all fully planted. But for every dollar you spend on landscaping, you get $3 in return. What a great thing, because these will grow in value as they grow in size. Now, it's very important. Back here behind me is this tree, and that's a Camperdown elm. That's my wife's favorite tree. So anything that I put in this area needs to be low enough so it will not hide this tree in the background. And you want to keep that in mind when you're landscaping. Keep in mind all the surroundings so it all meshes together beautifully. But look at the annuals, the perennials, and the shrubs. And this will be a permanent planting for many years to come. This is one of my favorite topics when I get a chance to answer some of your questions. And today, the first question is it possible to take cuttings from my roses? Absolutely. Let me show you first of all. This is new growth on a rose, and then this back here is mature growth. And I cut off one of these mature growths. In fact, here it is right here. And this is what you want to take a cutting, and this is a good time of the year to do it. You can take the cutting about that long, somewhere between, about 8 and 12 inches. Take all the bottom leaves off, like so, and just leave the very top leaves on. Dip this into a little bit of rooting hormone, and then simply put it outside, and I do it in sand. You could do it in soil, but I do it in sand. Now, don't expect every cutting to take root. So you maybe will want to take, 3, so you get 1 to grow, okay? But do it at this time of the year and directly into the garden. Now, our second question is, how about moving roses? Would this be a good time to move a rose? We're moving from this house and we'd like to take a rose to the new home. This is not a good time to move roses at all. And in fact, the roses that are established in the garden, unless they're in containers, are not going to move worth a darn. But if you have to take the rose with you, there are anti-transpirant products like wilt-proof. And what you do is you actually spray that on the leaves of the rose, cover the bush completely. And what it does is it holds the moisture in the plant. And then as quickly as possible, move it to its new location. Now, this type of a product can be used not only on roses, but it can be used on other plants. And there are other products that serve the same purpose too. So ask at your local nursery or garden center. But if you possibly can, don't move roses at this time of the year. It's better to move them during the winter dormant season. What about tomatoes? How do we take care of tomatoes at this time of the year? Are there any special notes we should know about them? Yes, by all means. Very often when tomatoes form their fruit like this, is what we like to do is to remove the foliage to get the sun to the tomato. And that's the worst thing you can do. If you get too much sunlight on a tomato, is what's going to happen is actually going to scald the fruit. And it's not going to ripen any quicker. Actually, the foliage is what helps the tomato ripen. So it's really important that you give that foliage, or give the plant and the tomato that foliage protection. Don't strip off the leaf. And hopefully that answers a few of your garden questions at this time of the year. We have some really interesting plants of the week this week. The first one is the Abelia. This is a variety called Abelia Edward Goucher. Look at the beautiful green foliage and these really bright pink flowers. You know what? They flower from June until October, so they have a really long flowering season. All the new growth on this one is bronze in color. Don't let the size of the plant fool you though, because this plant's going to get up 3 to 5 feet in height. Likes full, hot, bright sun. So a great plant for the sunny part of the garden. Now this is a different variety, and this gets a little bit taller. This is a variety called Francis Mason, and you'll notice that the foliage is variegated. So it's a combination of green and yellow. All the new growth again is bronze. The flower is a little bit lighter in color. But like Abelia Edward Goucher, Francis Mason flowers from June to October. So it's really a nice plant. By the way, this very often happens on Abelia, where you get very tall growth all of a sudden. Don't hesitate to prune that back. It'll keep the plant bushy, compact growing, and really attractive. Here's another nice plant family that loves the sun as well, Potentillas. This is a variety called Tangerine. Give it full, hot, bright sun. It'll grow up to 2 to 4 feet high. Here's one, a white flowering variety that's called Mount Everest. Very attractive. And then this larger flowering yellow variety is called Jackmanii. So you can see there are several different varieties, full, hot, bright sun, excellent plants. All of these plants that I've shown you are excellent border plants or sub-shrub plants to use in a bright, sunny part of the garden. And then I want to finish with this one. This is a hardy fuchsia, a variety called Papoose. And I'll talk more about them later on, but this is a good time to select and plant them. And those are my choices as plants of the week for this week. Next, let's talk about a great garden restoration. And I'm at Thornwood Castle and Gardens in Lakewood, Washington, and I'm with the owner, Richard Myro. Richard, what area are we in?
We're in the sunken gardens, the formal sunken gardens. It's exactly half an acre of formal gardens.
Did you start with a plan or a design?
Nothing at all. It was all covered with 8 inches of soil and berry briars, and just happened to start on a small section and went from there.
What a great job they've done. You can see all the beautiful plants in flower, the lilies, the roses, a little bit of everything. It's really outstanding. Now, how many people maintain this area?
We have one gardener. His name is Sarge, and myself, and we keep it up ourselves. The development was the hard part. Keeping it going seems to be the easy part.
What original artwork was left when you took over?
When I took over, the only thing that was here in the gardens was pretty much nothing. On the lakefront of the house, we had some planters, some ancient planters from the turn of the century that were brought here from probably England. Other than that, everything was sold at auction or in the 60s.
Oh, wow. The containers, not only the ones out front, but the ones you have here in the garden are very, very nicely done.
Thank you. We tried to match those to the ones that were at the on the lake side of the house.
And you've done a nice job. And then on an adjoining piece of property, which was originally part of this property, there is a fountain as well.
Yes, it's actually one of the only pieces of artwork that's left on the property at all, and it's on the adjacent home that's here.
Now, this was originally what, 100 acres, I think you said?
Somewhere over 100 acres of pristine gardens.
Oh, wow. Now, tell us a little bit about the history of the castle.
Mr. Thorne, who was a developer in Tacoma and had his own shipping company, went to Europe and tore down a castle over there and brought back much of the interior, which is over 500 years old, and had it architecturally designed and rebuilt here.
Richard, are the castle and gardens open to the public?
We don't have them open to the public, but we do operate a bed and breakfast here, and they certainly are welcome to come out and enjoy the gardens from there. And sometimes there are scheduled bus tours from touring companies that come in.
Now, also, I've got to just take a second and congratulate you on what a beautiful job that you and your wife, I'm sure, Deborah, and of course your gardener, Sarge, have done on the gardens. They really, truly are beautiful.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for sharing them with us. That's all the time we have today. Hope you can join me at the same time next time for Gardening in America.